move to State House?
Well, for me, I have every intention to respect the facilities that the state puts in place for various leaders, including those who occupy the highest office of Republican president, because there's a lot of thought and a lot of planning that goes into these facilities. The location of State House, the proximity to various defense and security wings, there's a lot of planning that went into that. So if an individual in their personal wisdom decide that they want to put all that aside and insist on staying at their own residence, then my feeling is that they would be doing that at their own peril, because they are basically ravishing the deep thoughts that various state institutions and security wings put into deciding where State House should be, and the fact that the Republican president should stay in that State House.
Nearly all presidents have not stayed at State House.
Sorry?
Nearly all presidents that we've had so far have not, stayed at State House. Most of them have lived in their private residence.
Oh, is that so?
So it wouldn't really be new.
Who do you have in mind?
President Edgar Lungu, President Rupiah Banda, President Hakainde now.
Oh, I didn't know that. So Rupiah Banda and President Lungu stayed outside of Kwazi House?
They stayed at the private residence.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that. Thank you for letting me know. I wasn't aware of that.
You've tested the law on this case before, and the Constitutional Court has pronounced itself that no law has been broken if a president decides to stay outside the jurisdiction that the state has provided for the sitting president.
Well, our belief is that the Constitutional Court misdirected itself in that particular petition which we took to the Concord. The argument that we presented was not answered by the court. And the argument that we presented was a simple argument. We stated in our petition that by staying at his private residence, the Republican president was wasting taxpayers' money, which is in violation of Article 127 of the Republican Constitution, which clearly states that public resources must be utilized diligently. You understand? That is the argument, and we backed up that argument by documenting the estimated cost of those daily trips by the president from New Kasama to his office at State House and then back to New Kasama. And the total cost, if my memory serves me right, per annum was coming to close to 1.2 billion kwacha. And we documented all that. That is the argument that we presented. So the finding of the court that there is no law that compels the president to stay at State House did not answer the basis of our petition. What the court should have said in their judgment, if they wanted to answer our petition, is to demonstrate that President Hakainde Hichilema is not wasting public taxpayers' money by staying where he's staying. And I can assure you, Mr. Mansa, that in their response, the Attorney General did not dispute our calculations of the cost that it is costing the taxpayers on an annual basis for the president to move from, community house to State House on a daily basis, sometimes twice a day, if he decides to have lunch at home instead of at State House. They did not dispute that. And our expectation was that the Concord would address the question that we posed to them. But we were surprised that in their judgment, the Constitutional Court decided to ignore the question we had posed to them, and they decided to answer a question which we had not asked them.
So the first time that you politicians would argue that's not the first time that the Constitutional Court, has done so to correct the question in the Edgar Lungu case. Obviously, that was the case as well. But let's move on from this, topic. It's been over a month, President Tembo, since your chairman of the Tonse Alliance went to be with the Lord President Edgar Lungu. I'd like to find out how is the Tonse Alliance coping up minus its chairman?
Well, we are hanging in there. Of course, almost all the members are devastated by the untimely loss of our chairman, the 60th Republican President, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. But we are coping, And, our pain and suffering has been protracted by the fact that we were not able to bury our chairman on the 26th of June when we traveled to South Africa due to the injunction that the government decided to put in place. So as things stand up to now, we are still mourning, and to a very large extent, this has, adversely affected the business of the alliance, because most of the key activities we are unable to undertake them because our chairman is still not buried. It would be disrespectful to the family of President Lungu, who was our chairman, for us to begin to embark on most of the public political activities before we bury the chairman. So it is tying our hands and our feet a little bit, but we are hopeful that come 4th of August, when the arguments are made, then the judge will give us a date for judgment, which will not be very far into the future, so that judgment can be passed, which we are very confident will be, in favor of the Lungu family, and that from there we're going to proceed to bury our chairman, and we are going to proceed to undertake most of the other political activities that we have been constrained from undertaking.
There seems to be so much confusion happening whilst the barrier is still yet to be decided upon. Others feel that the Tonse alliance has crumbled and you are no longer united. What is the correct position of the state of the Tonse alliance in terms of unity?
The Tonse alliance is in very strong shape. It is stronger than it has ever been. That is not to say that there are no pockets of disagreement here and there. You must understand, Mr. Mansa, that even a family which is related by blood, they do quarrel. They do disagree every now and then. But what is important is that after quarreling, they eventually sit together, they sit down, and they iron out their differences, and then they move forward as a family. Similarly, us as Tonse Alliance, every now and then we do have disagreements, and whenever we have those disagreements, we do sit together and we iron out our differences, and we move forward as a united family. Yes.
There's so many stories, that have been told around why the Tonse Alliance, was formed. To others, this was a special purpose vehicle for President Edgar Lungu to contest the 2026 elections, owing to the fact that, his party had intra-party wrangles that are still unresolved in the courts of law today. Are you able to confirm with us that indeed the true intention of the formation of the Tonse Alliance was for it to be a special purpose vehicle for Lungu to contest the 2026 elections?
Well, the Tonse Alliance, Mr. Mansa, I'll give you some background to it. The Tonse Alliance was formed more as a reaction to the failures of the previous alliance, which was there, which is the United Kwacha Alliance. I'm sure you remember UKA. Sometime in April of 2024, I and my party decided to join the United Kwacha Alliance, where I found the other people who were already there, including President Edgar Lungu. And as time went on, it came to our realization, those of us who wanted some progress within the alliance, that we were not making much progress within the United Kwacha Alliance. And myself and President Lungu sat down, and he called his political advisor, Dr. Zumani, and the three of us decided to map the way forward, how we could make UKA, more progressive, and try and make it, make political progress, roll it out to the provinces and allow more people to join, because the appetite was there, but we were not expanding at the rate we were supposed to. And along the way, it came to our realization that we were not going to manage to achieve the objectives that we wanted to achieve within the confines of the United Kwacha Alliance, and that we were probably wasting our time with our continued membership in UKA. And therefore, we resolved, the three of us, to say, let us consider creating an alternative vehicle which can be designed in such a way that we are not going to be undermined from within, and we can just apply our energies to moving forward, to achieving the objectives we want to achieve. And that is where the idea of the Tonse Alliance came up with, you know. So we designed the Tonse Alliance in such a way that we would address the various flaws that we had identified in the United Kwacha Alliance, one of which was, you know, internal infiltration, and the other one was state interference. I'm sure you remember that UKA tried to register, and the Registrar of Societies kept sending us from pillar to post. We submitted our fingerprints to the Zambia police for screening, I think 5 or 6 times, but it was never registered. So when we designed the Tonse Alliance, we designed it in such a way that we would try to overcome some of the vulnerabilities that were there under UKA. And subsequent to that, we came up with a name, and we came up with the constitution. And after the Tonse Alliance was formed, that is when President Lungu said, okay, fine, now that this is in place, regarding the rest of the logistics, such as the launch and ABCD, you deal with my party officials. And he handed us over to the PF Secretary General, Honorable Nakachinda, and his Vice President, Honorable Rovinda, to handle the rest of what followed. And we proceeded, and subsequently launched the Tonse Alliance on the 7th of November, 2024, at Palm Valley Resort. And from there, we continued conducting the business of the Alliance. So to answer your question, was the Tonse Alliance formed to be used as a platform for Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu? Yes and no. So when you look at the structure of the Tonse Constitution, it is designed to provide a platform for Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, the right, but it is also designed to be able to function and move forward even in the absence of the 60th Republican president. So it was meant to serve a dual purpose, both as a platform for the 60th Republican president as a presidential candidate, but also as a platform for the Zambian people to be able to utilize it and achieve the objective of changing government in 2026.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Others within OCA, others within the Tonse say that you don't have a constitution, you have some form of understanding. You have about 14 understanding points that you have. Does Tonse have a constitution?
Yes. Who was telling you that we don't have a constitution? Is that a member of the Tonse Alliance? Because if it is a member of the Tonse Alliance, then such an individual is just trying to be a troublemaker. One of the conditions for you to be a member of the Tonse Alliance is that, first of all, you need to be invited by one of the members, officially invited. Once you are invited, you need to be accepted by the majority of the members of the Tonse Alliance. That is number 2. Number 3, after you have been accepted at a meeting of the Council of Leaders, you then need to sign the Tonse Alliance Constitution, in which you are agreeing to subscribe yourself to the values and principles of the Tonse Alliance as enshrined in the Constitution. So that is the 3rd requirement. So there's no one, that's why I was asking you earlier about the person who was telling you that the Tonse Alliance does not have a constitution, whether that person is a member or not. Because no one can become a member of the Tonse Alliance without signing the Tonse Alliance Constitution.
Yes. Is the Zambia Must Prosper a part of the Tonse Alliance?
Yes. The Zambia Must Prosper is a member of the Tonse Alliance. They were admitted to the Tonse Alliance. There is one administrative activity that the Zambia Must Prosper did not do, and that administrative activity is yet to be done. But in terms of admission, they were officially admitted to the Tonse Alliance. So as things stand today, the Zambia Must Prosper is a full member of the Tonse Alliance. And if anyone tells you otherwise, it means they are merely expressing their personal opinion and not the position of the Tonse Alliance. Yes.
How do you treat political parties that solely want to join the Tonse? Because you gave us, an indication that you must, a member of the Tonse Alliance must invite a political party, to the Tonse Alliance, and then you verify and check, whether they can be admitted or not. What about political parties that, have solely submitted their application? And I'll give an example of the Socialist Party. How are you treating the application?
Okay, I'll come to there are 2 questions there. One about the process of joining through invitation, and the other one specifically about the Socialist Party. So I'll start with the first one. So if you as a political party decide to just by your own, will, you decide to submit an application, it means you have not followed the procedure. Because the procedure is that a member of the Tonse Alliance must invite you, formally invite you. So if you want to join as a political party, the first step is to approach one of the members of the Tonse Alliance and ask that member to say, we want to join. Are you able to invite us? So they need to write to you formally and say, we are inviting, Andrew Mansa political party to join Tonse Alliance. We're inviting you to join Tonse Alliance. And then you further proceed now to say, we have been invited to join the Tonse Alliance, and here is our application. So the application has to be preceded by an invitation. You must be invited first before you apply. And then from there, we are then going to consider your application and then decide whether to admit you or not.
Why is it so? Why make the process so tedious?
Like I told you, Mr. Mansa, that the Tonse Alliance was largely formed as a reaction or a response to the challenges that we faced under the United Kwacha Alliance. We learned a number of lessons at the United Kwacha Alliance, and most of the things that we are doing in the Tonse Alliance is to ensure that we are not subjected to the same pitfalls that we were subjected to under the United Kwacha Alliance. Yes.
The Socialist Party case?
The Socialist Party did submit an application to join the Tonse Alliance. That application has not been considered yet, so at this point I cannot determine whether that application had been preceded by an invitation from one of the members of the Tonse Alliance or not, whether that requirement was fulfilled, because that can only be determined at the time you are considering the application to say, these people who have applied, did someone invite them? You understand? But we never reached that stage. And the reason we never reached that stage is because of the issue of the audio that arose. I'm sure you remember the issue of the audio, yes, where the Socialist Party youth chairman, Mr. Kelvin Kaunda, together with the daughter of the Socialist Party president, is it Hakainde member? Yes. We are here basically discussing and disparaging the late chairman of the Tonse Alliance, who is also the former Republican president, Dr. Edgar Chagwarungu, and making fun of his illness when he was undergoing that cancer treatment in South Africa. So when that audio arose, we as the Tonse Alliance decided to reach out to the Socialist Party. Myself, in my capacity as chairman of the disciplinary committee, I wrote a letter to Dr. Fred Membe. And in that letter, it was a very friendly letter, I essentially asked him on behalf of the Tonse Alliance for him to explain the audio that had been circulating, in which senior members of his political party were, recorded disparaging our chairman, the chairman of the same alliance that his party wanted to join. And our expectation was that we were going to get a response, a formal response from the Socialist Party president, either to state that no, those people who were discussing that, it was at individual level, it had nothing to do with the official position of the party, and disciplinary action is going to be taken against them, something to that effect. Just to assure us that the entire Socialist Party as an organization was not, holding the same position that those two individuals were holding regarding our chairman, you understand? So, unfortunately, we did not get that response from the president of the Socialist Party. Up to now, we have not gotten any response. But we did note that there was a junior member of the Socialist Party. Whether that junior member spoke with the authority of the entire party or they were speaking out of their own individual capacity, we can't tell. But there was a junior member of the Socialist Party who basically issued a statement shortly after we had wrote Dr. Fred Membereta. He issued a statement to the effect that the Tonse Alliance cannot question the internal activities of the Socialist Party, something to that effect. I didn't pay much attention to it because, like I said, it was a junior member. At that time, we were focusing on waiting for a response, a formal response from the president of the Socialist Party. So that is where things are, and up to now we have not received that response, and because of that fact, we could not proceed to consider the application of the Socialist Party. But I must be quick to mention, Mr. Mansa, that when the Socialist Party first applied and we received their application, which was I think 2 or 3 days before the audio, we as Tonse Alliance, myself actually as spokesperson, we issued a statement to say we have received an application from the Socialists. We are very happy to have received an application from the Socialists because as an alliance, we believe in numbers, we believe in growing. But even as we believe in growing with the right people. So it's not that we're going to embrace everybody, regardless of their standing, regardless of their views regarding our chairman, we are still going to embrace them just because we want to grow. No. But we believe in growing with people who have good intentions and people who want us to work together to succeed in this particular matter of changing government and bringing in a new government. And so I'm saying that, I'm talking about that to emphasize the fact that, as Tonse Alliance, we are not averse to specific political parties. And if tomorrow the Socialist Party, through their president, decided to, respond to the letter that we wrote to them, even if it's about 4 months ago, and they gave a sound explanation regarding that audio, and they gave, sound actions that they took, because those are senior members, you understand? So for us to feel comfortable, we would need to know what actions they would have taken against those members, because those members were disparaging our chairman. So if we are happy with the actions they've taken or which they are going to take, then we would still consider the Socialist Party. And we would consider their membership, and I'm confident that the other members of the Tonse Alliance would welcome the idea of the Socialist Party joining.
There's 3 positions so far that I've heard from 2 different people. The first position I heard from the Socialist Party Vice President, who said that you're growing cold feet in admitting the Socialist Party, and they don't know why you still haven't, accepted their invitation. Another was your Secretary General of the Tonse Alliance, Honorable Rafael Nakachinda. I was speaking to him just a few days ago. I asked him the same question. He told me that it was actually the Socialist Party leader, Dr. Freddie Membe, who asked that you hold on the process of admitting them. So it's him who asked that you hold on the process of admitting him. I'm getting a different version from you, that the reason for why this admittance hasn't been processed is because of that audio that leaked. What is your personal views of the Socialist Party? Is it a party that can be trusted to be a part of the alliance?
Yeah, I mean, they are an opposition political party, and they are active in providing checks and balances against the government. And their president is being persecuted by the government, just like all of us in the opposition are being persecuted. We meet at court quite often. Almost every time I'm at court, he's also at court, at the magistrate's court. So to answer your question, yes, I've got no reservations about the fact that he's a true opposition leader. I've got no doubts about that in my mind. I do believe he's a true opposition leader, and that he means what he says, and that the Socialist Party is a true opposition that we as Tonse would not be shy to associate with. But in the same breath, I took very strong exception with the disparaging remarks of their senior members, and I think for the, if at all, the deputy president of the Socialist Party, that's Dr. Msumali,
yes.
If at all he did say that we in the Tonse Alliance are developing court feet to admit them, then I find that very regrettable. Why would we develop court feet? And that is not very good language to use regarding an organization which you you are intending to join.
And I was very intentional in asking you that question because you, President Sean Tembo, the time that your Secretary General and Vice President of the party, of the Patriotic Front, Gavin Lewinda, was associating with the Socialist Party, you had a problem with that. In fact, you even attempted to make them undergo disciplinary action because you were making wild allegations that the Patriotic Front Secretary General and the Vice President, Gavin Lewinda, together with the Socialist Party, are planning, to take over the Tonse Alliance. Those are allegations that you made, and that's why I asked you whether you trust the Socialist Party.
So, regarding that disciplinary process, which we decided to suspend, the background to that was that we had a situation where some members of the Tonse Alliance, including the two people that you've mentioned, were seen fraternizing with the leadership of the Socialist Party. That was way before Socialists actually applied to join Tonse. Okay. They were seen fraternizing not on one occasion, not on two occasions, but on various occasions. All right. And they, at some point, were even holding what they were calling joint press briefings without the sanction of the Tonse Alliance and using the Tonse Alliance logo. You know, the Tonse Alliance is made up of various organizations and political parties. And we in the Tonse Alliance are not averse to individual members of the Tonse Alliance undertaking other political activities outside the umbrella of the Tonse Alliance. We are not averse to that. Before the Tonse Alliance, before the Tonse Alliance was formed, most of these individuals were already politicians and they were undertaking political activities. So we can't stop them from undertaking political activities, individual political activities, simply because they've joined the Tonse Alliance. But when they undertake these individual political activities, they should not undertake them using the umbrella of Tonse. They should not go to a forum and start speaking and say, I'm here as a Tonse, blah, blah, blah. No. You can only do that with the sanction of Tonse. You understand? Similarly, myself, I can't go on a platform without the sanction of the Alliance and say, I'm here as Tonse Alliance spokesperson, and I start taking positions on different issues, which positions were not previously discussed as an alliance. I can't do that. But as PEP president, I can do that. You understand? So the challenge we had there was that those two individuals were going on these platforms under the banner of Tonse and using the logo of Tonse without the authority, permission, or knowledge of the Tonse Alliance. So that is where we took issue. And we asked them to say, we have this situation, we have this audio, and we have these incidents of you fraternizing and taking positions which have never been endorsed by Tonse, using the Tonse logo. Can you explain yourselves? Yeah. So that is the background to that disciplinary process. But along the way, of course, President Edgar Lungu, who was still around at that time, decided that it wouldn't be appropriate for us to proceed with those disciplinary actions. But the initiation of the disciplinary proceedings themselves were done with the blessings of the chairman, Dr. Edgar Chagwalungu.
Did you feel undermined when that direction was given to you?
Not at all, not at all. Mr. Mansa, I'll tell you something. You know, when you have an organization such as an alliance, which you intend to grow, you know, there will be a number of members who are going to be misbehaving every now and then. So you, in order to maintain the integrity of that organization, you have a very thin line to walk. You understand? On one hand, you need to be firm and ensure that members are not misbehaving. And then on the other hand, you don't need to be heavy-handed for fear of alienating members. Because these are senior people, these are people who are leaders in their individual institutions, and they've come under the banner of the alliance. You understand? Yeah. So it's the job of being a disciplinary committee chairman is a very difficult job. And sometimes when you are taking action, you would be taking action but doubting whether it is the most appropriate action. You understand? Whether that action would actually help to grow the alliance or it would end up tearing the alliance. You understand? So on one hand, indiscipline in any organization that has indiscipline is unlikely to succeed. You understand? But again, on the other hand, if you are too, if you have a high appetite for unleashing the whip, again, that will destroy. So either way, too much of either way will bring the organization into jeopardy. If you ask me, when I, in my capacity as chairman of a disciplinary committee, decided to write those letters to those two colleagues, I did it with a very heavy heart. It's not like it's something I did with excitement. I say, yeah, now let's discipline these ones. No. I did it with a very heavy heart. And the reason I did it with a very heavy heart is because, you know, I felt that our self-controlled themselves without having to make me as the person in charge of discipline invoke my powers. You understand? That was my expectation. And I honestly wanted that to be the case. But on the other hand, since I was instructed by the chairman to say, you are the chairman of the disciplinary committee, you look at this matter and guide on how you believe you must proceed. So I was given that mandate. So I reviewed the matter and I went back to the chairman and I told the chairman, say, this matter, I think the best thing is for me to formally write to these individuals and ask them to explain themselves. We didn't lay charges. You must take it. Yeah, you must have that part very clearly. We did not lay charges.
I followed that particular conversation very keenly, and I saw your comment even after the direction was given by President Edgar Lungu.
Yes.
I saw your comment in the comment section with your Facebook account. You stated very clearly that this doesn't look like the handwriting of the chairman, but it will follow regardless. That's what you said on the comment section.
That is a separate issue. That is a separate issue. The issue you are talking about is that issue where there was a statement on President Lungu's Facebook page, which was alleging that he had fired his political advisor, Dr. Chris Zumanzimba. And we went to that page, we looked at what was posted and the language that was used, and that is where I commented to say, this doesn't sound like the language of our chairman. We are going to follow up this matter and determine whether indeed the Tonse Alliance chairman, Dr. Edgar Chagwarungu, had indeed authorized this particular posting. And for sure, we followed up that matter. And it was determined that that particular post was posted on our chairman's page without his authority. And subsequent to that, that is how come Dr. Chris Zumanzimba was put back in his position as a political advisor and the chief consultant of the Tonse Alliance. Yes.
Let's talk about some of the other core principles that anchor the Tonse Alliance. For instance, you've gone public to tell us that the NCP was going to be a special purpose vehicle that you're going to use to field in candidates, whenever there's a by-election. Was that an agreed upon principle that is embedded in the Constitution, or that is bound to change?
Well, that position is a position that was deliberated by the entire Tonse Alliance during one of the meetings of Council of Leaders, and the resolution was made to that effect. And until such a time that the Tonse Alliance meets and makes a different resolution, that will remain the position of the Tonse Alliance. So we are going to be fielding candidates using the vehicle of the New Congress Party.
Of the New Congress Party.
Yes.
So, also, correct me if I'm wrong, the Patriotic Front was made as the anchor party of this alliance. That technically means that whoever becomes PF president then becomes chairman of the alliance. Is that the true position?
That's not the correct position. So, in terms of the way the Tonse Alliance Constitution was made, maybe let me give you a bit of background to that effect. The way the Tonse Alliance Constitution was made is that the starting point was the terms of reference of the Tonse Alliance. That was the starting point. And then along the way, once President Edgar Lungu handed us over to the Secretary General and the Vice President for them to actually, complete the process of joining the Tonse Alliance, because the Tonse Alliance was in place before PF actually joined. So we formed the Tonse Alliance, and then through President Edgar Lungu, we asked PF to join. So when PF was joining, what they did is they shared with us what they called their rules of engagement. At that particular time, if you remember, UCA was still quite vibrant.
Yes.
And at that particular time, President Edgar Lungu was an individual member of UCA as opposed to PF. There was no PF official who was sitting in the UCA Council of Presidents or Council of Leaders. So PF was insisting at that time that they wanted to be a member of UCA before we decided to pull out of UCA. So when the time came for PF to join Tonse, they said, fine, we are going to apply to not only join Tonse, but we are going to apply to join Tonse and UCA, and what was the other alliance that was?
December 1.
Yeah, not really December 1. There was another one from the Copper Belt by President Pinta Sintamba.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So they prepared their rules of engagement, like these are the conditions we are applying to join, these are the conditions under which we can join. You understand? So they wrote to all these institutions. So for us, as Tonse Alliance, we looked at the PF rules of engagement.
Yeah.
And then we looked at the terms of reference of the Tonse Alliance, like the founding principles of the Tonse Alliance. So we told our colleagues in the PF to say, out of your so-called rules of engagement, for you to join the Tonse Alliance, we can accept this one, we can accept this one, we can accept this one, we can accept that one. You understand? I'll give you one of the examples. Among those rules of engagement, there was a provision, among others that we rejected as Tonse Alliance. Yes. There was a provision which said that the decisions of the Tonse Alliance will be made by the PF Central Committee. In other words, the PF Central Committee would meet, make decisions, and then those are the decisions that would bind the Tonse Alliance. You understand? So we told our colleagues in the PF to say, we cannot accept that, because Tonse Alliance is not Patriotic Front. Patriotic Front is merely a member of the Tonse Alliance. Among those rules of engagement was a requirement by the PF to say, if they are going to join, they need to be an anchor party. So we told them, say, you cannot be an anchor party, but we are going to recognize the fact that you'll be the biggest political party in the alliance. How are we going to recognize that? We are going to recognize that by the number of people that you are going to second to sit in the Council of Leaders of the Tonse Alliance. So when you look at the Tonse Alliance Constitution, you realize that out of the total number of members of the Council of Leaders, 50% are coming from the Patriotic Front. They are entitled to second 50% of the total number of members of the Council of Leaders. And then us as people, we have our entitlement. If I'm not mistaken, I think it should be about 10%. And then you have CDP, they have their entitlement. So in terms of people's ranking or political parties ranking in the Tonse Alliance Constitution, it was based on the assessed strength of a particular political party and contribution. And then that would be your allocation of how many people you can second to the Council of Leaders and to the General Conference. So, part of the confusion that I believe has been causing some of the perceived commotion within the Tonse Alliance is the lack of understanding of some of the leaders and supporters and members in terms of how Tonse is structured. most of our colleagues are taking the submissions that PF made when they were applying to join Tonse as having wholly been accepted. You understand? Yes. But they were not wholly accepted. We rejected, if you had mentioned that you would be asking this question, I would have come with a printout of the PF rules of engagement and the Tonse constitution, and I would have outlined for you to say this particular item in the PF rules of engagement was accepted, this was accepted, this was declined, this was declined. So it is not everything in their so-called rules of engagement that was adopted. So what the PF leaders should do is educate their members to say it is not each and every provision of their so-called rules of engagement that was actually adopted.
That does not seem to be consistent with what is happening now. And I'll demonstrate why. Right now, your acting chairman is Honorable Given Luminda, who is the acting president of the Tonse Alliance. My question earlier on was, the position of chairmanship of the Tonse Alliance, the person who assumes it must come from the Patriotic Front and must hold the PF presidency.
No, that is not correct.
Why then is Luminda holding the chairmanship?
So, the background to this matter, Mr. Mansa, is that when President Lungu left the jurisdiction on the 21st of January 2025, the vice chairman of the Tonse Alliance, who is Professor Dan Pule, was the acting chairman. Okay? Yes. He's the one who was acting chairman. Not through appointment, but through following the provisions of the Constitution. Because the Constitution of the Tonse Alliance does not give power to any individual to appoint another individual. No, it doesn't. So anyone who comes to you and says, I was appointed by that one, you should ask them to say what provision of the Constitution gave that person who appointed you power to appoint you. Because before you are appointed and before you come out say, me, I've been appointed to this position, the person appointing you should have that power, isn't it?
Yes.
Me, tomorrow I can't wake up and issue a press statement there and say, I'm the new Minister of Finance. And then people ask me, who appointed you? I say, Mr. Andrew Mansa. They will say, does Mr. Andrew Mansa have the power to appoint you? So it has to be someone who has power to appoint you. So the only time that I can wake up tomorrow and say I'm Minister of Finance is if Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, who is the president now, appoints me, isn't it? Yes, the same thing with the Tonse Constitution. A person cannot come to you and say, I was appointed by Mr. Lungu as chairman. The Tonse Constitution does not give any power to the chairman to appoint the acting chairman or any other position. Positions are appointed by consensus and resolutions of the Council of Leaders. You understand? So, I was giving you the background. When our chairman, Dr. Edgar Chagwalungu, left the jurisdiction on 21st of January to go to South Africa, he left the vice chairman. Not him appointing him, but he left him there because the Constitution provided for the vice chairman to be the acting. Yes. So Dr. Dan Pule, Professor Dan Pule was the acting chairman. And he was acting chairman, I think we held about 3 meetings where he was acting chairman. Nobody questioned him because the Constitution clearly provided. And those meetings were attended by all the individuals that might now be going around giving contrary positions, including the Secretary General and the Vice President of the Patriotic Front, Honorable Given. They attended those meetings chaired by Professor Dan Pule. No one questioned that. However, sometime in around 28th, if I'm not mistaken, around 28th of February 2025, Professor Dan Pule had to travel to India for medical attention. Okay? He had to travel to India for medical attention. So at that point, after he traveled to India for medical attention, both the chairman and the vice chairman were out of jurisdiction. Okay? So now the question is, what does the Constitution provide when the chairman and the vice are not there? Article 3 of the Tonse Alliance Constitution is very clear. It says, that's why I'm saying if you had told me you would be asking these questions, I would have come with these documents so that I can read them to you. It says that if the chairman and the vice are both unavailable, then the Council of Leaders shall elect one among them to chair a particular meeting. Okay, so you meet as a council of leaders, and someone will be nominated to say this one is being nominated as the chairman. If there are more than one person, then we are going to do an election. If it is just one, then they'll go unopposed. That person is the one who will chair that particular meeting. Not as a standing acting chair, no. There's no provision for standing acting chair. You chair a particular meeting. Again, when we convene again, if people are interested to stand as chairman, they'll raise their hands. If not, then one person who is available will go unopposed. That is the constitutional provision. So, when we had a meeting when both the chair and the vice chair were out of jurisdiction, Honorable Given Luwinda offered to chair the meeting. And there was no one else who was interested in chairing the meeting. So he went unopposed. And then another meeting again was convened. Again, he went unopposed. I think we held about 3 meetings where he went unopposed. And he was chairing the meetings. You know, in the Tonse Alliance, we are more focused on achieving the ultimate objectives as opposed to this, minor power struggles, who is chairing, who is what, because resolutions are made by the entire Council of Leaders. So whether you chair or you don't chair, it doesn't make you more powerful than others per se. So even these squabbles of who chairs what, I see them as being petty and unnecessary from my personal point of view. Yes.
So in fact, KBF was correct to say that the position that Luwinda is holding wasn't given to him.
No. So let me finish explaining what I was saying. Because I was giving you the background of where we are.
Yeah.
Yes. So what happened is that sometime in, if my memory serves me right, sometime around May, early May, the vice chairman of the Tonse Alliance, Professor Dan Pule, came back to the jurisdiction from India, where he was receiving medical treatment. And when he came back, he was still recovering. Okay, so he was within jurisdiction, but he was not available. All right. So when we held a meeting, again, we had to elect a chair to chair that meeting. But by that time, the process had been, regularized, so to speak, because there was no one who was interested in it. Challenging Honorable Luwinda to chair the meeting. So it was almost automatic that Honorable Luwinda went ahead. So there was a meeting where Honorable Luwinda chaired, where Professor Dan Pule, who is the vice chairman, was within jurisdiction. You understand? The problem started, I think, when there was a meeting now, when Professor Dan Pule started feeling much better. He convened a meeting, okay, as the vice chair. Meaning that he was now available.
Acting chair.
Yes, acting chair now, yes, because he was available. When that meeting was convened, now there were objections. Okay, there were objections which came from Honorable Luwinda and the people around him, some of the people that were supporting him, to say that, the acting chair continues to be Honorable Luwinda. So he said, but how can that be the case? Because the substantive person is now available. So how can you say that the acting chair is Honorable Luwinda? So that went on for a while. But when you're running these political organizations, you have a number of disagreements. The key is to try and resolve them internally. So we tried to resolve that matter internally. As a matter of fact, even up to now, we are trying to resolve it internally. It's just unfortunate that about a week ago, or is it 2 weeks ago, there was a screaming headline that came in the Daily Liberation newspaper where someone came across a submission, an internal submission that was made by President KBF in the Council of Leaders group, where he was basically asserting to say, this disagreement is unnecessary because the Constitution is very clear as to who should be chairman if the vice is available, blah, 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 So it was just a discourse within the Council of Leaders. But someone picked that submission from President KBF and took it to the media outside. And it ended up being a front headline for the Daily Liberation newspaper. And then subsequent to that, there were a number of attacks now against President KBF by Honorable Luwinda's surrogates, You know, people like Kennedy Kamba, a number of those individuals, Ibrahim, and so on and so forth, in the public domain. You understand? Which was unnecessary. At some point, I think on Saturday, I had to issue a memo to everybody to say, look, this matter is a matter we've been debating internally for a while, and we are going to resolve it internally. Therefore, any person who proceeds to issue a public statement on this internal matter, I'm going to institute disciplinary action against that individual. And it doesn't matter what your position is, whether actual or acting, it doesn't matter. Anyone who comments on this matter publicly will take action against them. Because, you know, as an alliance, when you start taking your dirty linen to the public and washing it in the public domain, you end up undermining the public confidence in you as an organization that can take over the running of this government next year. You understand? So you would not be undermining the person you are challenging and insulting, but you are undermining the entire alliance, the entire Tonse. So if you challenge and you insult KBF and you say bad things about KBF, it's not KBF you are destroying Tonse as a whole. So from there has been some quiet. Of course, there have been a few sentiments here and there, but there's been relative calm. And I can assure you that internally we are taking active steps to resolve this matter. And that will involve basically sitting the concerned parties together, hopefully with some other external people who can help to mediate this issue. And then we'll resolve it and say, okay, what are your arguments for being acting chair? Then we'll hear from Honorable Ravinda. We'll ask Dr. Dan Pule, what are your arguments for, saying, you need to be acting chair. He will give us his arguments. And then hopefully an external neutral panel will hear both parties and they will make a determination. And thereafter, the expectation is that whatever the determination is going to be, all parties are going to respect that determination.
For me, it sounds like then you are underplaying your constitution, because your constitution is very clear. You mustn't call in external people to explain to you what your own constitution says.
Mr. Mansa, what you feel is very clear to someone who is aggrieved, and you give them an opportunity to explain themselves. They will explain to you to say, no, the fact that that comma was there and not there changed the meaning. So the new meaning is ABCD. You understand? So for purposes of fairness, it is important to hear the parties. Me, I'm looking at it from my standpoint. You might look at it from your standpoint, but the person who is claiming that they should be acting chair might be looking at it from their own standpoint. So you give them a chance and say, explain to us, tell us, why do you think you need to be acting chair despite the provisions of the Constitution? And let that person explain. And then have a neutral panel, and let that panel determine. But what is important is that once that determination is made, then everybody will be expected to fall in line. After a determination is made, if anybody decides to fall out of line, and it means that it is now clear that they don't have a genuine grievance, but they are just out to destroy the alliance from within. And appropriate action would then have to be taken against such individuals.
Briefly, part of my concluding question. What is the process they're going to use to identify who the next chairman is going to be and your candidate for 2026?
So, if you look at the Tonse Alliance Constitution, you realize that there, the chairman was both chairman as well as our 2026 candidate, Dr. Edgar Chagwalungu. Now, in terms of going forward, after President Lungu was disqualified by the Constitutional Court, which is a matter that we are still challenging in court, the Constitution made it very clear to say if President Lungu is not available to be presidential candidate, then he is going to identify a candidate for the alliance. You get the point. That's the provision of the Constitution. So that means that after President Lungu was disqualified, it was up to him to identify a candidate for the alliance. Yes. So
did you do so for that?
So there are two issues that arise now. First of all, in terms of us going forward, we would have to identify a chairman for the Tonse Alliance, okay, a substantive chairman for the Tonse Alliance. And that chairman may not necessarily be the presidential candidate. The two processes would have to be separate. So there will be a process of identifying a chairman and then a process of identifying a presidential candidate for the alliance. Assuming that President Edgar Lungu did not leave a written will or instruction in terms of who the presidential candidate should be. If President Edgar Lungu left a will or a written instruction to say, I want that person to be the presidential candidate, then it means that is the person who is going to be embraced. Because the Constitution is very clear. In Article 2 of the Constitution, it says clearly, our chairman shall be the 60th Republican President, Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, who shall also be our 2026 presidential candidate. It further goes on to say that if our 2026 presidential candidate is not available, then the person who shall be, excuse me, the person who shall be the Tonse Alliance candidate shall be a person that will be selected or appointed by Dr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu. And that appointment can either be done while he was alive or through a will after he dies. You understand? So, if there's any instruction, we haven't checked with the Lungu family because it's premature now. We haven't buried our chairman. But after we bury, we're going to engage the Lungu family and find out whether there is any instruction or will that our chairman left. If there is, then we'll follow that. If there isn't, then us now as a Tonse Alliance, we need to agree on a process of identifying a presidential candidate, because that is not provided for in the Constitution. So it would have to be by consensus. We need to sit around the round table and say, how do we identify a 2026 candidate? And then people will make submissions, and then we'll deliberate, and we'll adopt one process that will be used.
Are you interested in taking over the presidency of the Tonse Alliance and subsequent the elections of 2026 as candidate of the alliance?
You mean chairmanship of the Tonse Alliance?
Presidential candidate for the Tonse Alliance.
Being presidential candidate for the Tonse Alliance. Well, if the people say I should be a presidential candidate, then I'll accept. But if the people don't say that I should be presidential candidate, then I'm not going to offer myself, because I respect the will of the people. This coming election, Mr. Andrew Mansa, is more than the dictates of individual ambitions. You understand? It's more than the dictates of individual ambitions. This coming election is, for some of us, a matter of life and death. It is something that has to be won by us in the Tonse Alliance.
Why?
Because you've seen the rate at which we are being victimized. You know, one person says, no, you are being attacked by these cadres, defend yourselves. Bino Mpundu says that tomorrow is being charged with sedition. You know, you can't live in a country like that. You know, the current president, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, used to tell his people that there's nothing wrong with defending yourself. So that is the rate at which us in the opposition are being being harassed and being victimized, and we just need to have a change of government. We can't afford to continue with UPND and President Hakainde Hichilema post-2026. We can't. It's untenable. So for me, changing government and putting in a candidate who can win us the election is more important than any personal ambitions I might have. As things stand, my personal ambitions, I've put them aside. My job is just to facilitate the winning of next year's elections. Whether that winning is done through you as our candidate, Mr. Andrew Mans, or indeed any other individual, my job is to back that person with my full force and my full energy and my full resources. That is my primary job. And anyone who comes in the way to disturb our changing government next year, then that person will be put aside. There's no question about it. Whether that person is undermining the alliance from within or from outside, we are not going to tolerate such a person. That is why I was telling you that these squabbles, we are giving them due process. They are minor squabbles in my view, but we are giving them due process. But once a determination is made, any person who will then come and start causing confusion, then that person will quickly be put aside and the train will move forward. Because this train is bigger than any individual, regardless of how much a particular individual feels they are politically potent. It's not about individuals, it's about the people out there. The people want change next year.